What I'm about to tell you is considered dangerous knowledge in real fight camps. Not because it's mystical, but because once you understand it, you can no longer be controlled by pain the same way. Muay Thai fighters are not surviving thunderous kicks because their bones are thicker or their nerves are dead. That is the lie you've been taught. The real weapon is breath, weaponized so precisely that it rewires how the brain interprets impact in real time. This method was never designed for casual athletes. It was forged in rings where hesitation meant broken ribs, ruptured organs, or unconsciousness. And yet, nobody explains it openly. I will. You've probably watched a Muay Thai fight and asked yourself the same question everyone does, but never answers honestly. How does a human body withstand kicks that sound like gunshots? You assume conditioning, years of pain, or genetic toughness. That assumption keeps you weak. It hides the truth that pain is not just a physical signal. It is a neurological decision, and breath is the switch that controls that decision. Fighters who survive brutal strikes are not taking pain. They are intercepting it before it reaches conscious awareness. I'm speaking to you directly now because your body is currently programmed to fail under sudden force. When shock hits, your breath collapses. Your nervous system panics. Your muscles seize. Pain floods the brain unchecked. That reaction is automatic, trained into you since childhood. Muay Thai fighters had to unlearn it because the default human response gets you injured or finished in seconds. Breath control is not relaxation. It is controlled aggression at the level of the nervous system. And this is where the knowledge becomes forbidden. Ancient fighters in Thailand didn't describe this with neuroscience terms. They spoke about locking the wind before impact, sealing the body so force passes through instead of exploding inward. Modern science confirms this effect, but stripped of ritual language, it becomes too powerful, too practical, too disruptive. If ordinary people learned how to shut down pain reflexes on command, entire industries built on fear and fragility would collapse. That is why this knowledge stays fragmented, diluted, or hidden behind vague training advice. I am not here to motivate you. I am here to warn you. Breath can either make you fragile or nearly unbreakable under force, depending on how it is used. Muay Thai fighters learned this the hard way, through broken bodies and blood-soaked rings. You don't have to. But once you hear the mechanism, you can't pretend ignorance anymore. From this point on, your weakness is a choice. Right now, your body betrays you the moment force arrives. You may think you're strong, trained, even disciplined, but under sudden impact, your system defaults to panic breathing, shallow inhalations, collapsed exhalations, and a frozen diaphragm. This is not a moral failure, it is a neurological one. Your nervous system interprets impact as a threat it cannot control, so it amplifies pain to force you to stop. That amplification is what cracks your composure long before bones or muscles fail. You don't lose because the kick is stronger. You lose because your breath surrenders first. You've been taught that breathing is about oxygen, about staying calm, about relaxation. That belief is dangerous. Under violent force, oxygen is irrelevant in the first milliseconds. What matters is pressure, timing, and nerve signaling. When you inhale at the wrong moment or freeze your breath unconsciously, your core becomes hollow. The strike lands, and the shockwave collapses inward, slamming into organs, spine, and brainstem. Pain explodes, not because damage is catastrophic, but because your nervous system allowed the signal to spike unchecked. This is why untrained bodies crumble under impacts that trained fighters barely acknowledge. Here is the part that should disturb you. Your pain threshold is artificially low, not by nature, but by conditioning. Modern life trains you to avoid discomfort, to breathe shallowly, to brace instead of seal. Every time stress hits, your breath rises into the chest. That pattern wires your vagus nerve to associate pressure with danger instead of control. So when force arrives, your system does exactly what it was trained to do. It overreacts. Muay Thai fighters are dangerous not because they ignore pain, but because they have trained their nervous system to downgrade pain signals at the moment of impact. You feel pain as something happening to you. Fighters experience pain as information they can delay, reroute, or mute. That difference determines whether you fold or stay standing. And here's the brutal truth. Most coaches won't say out loud, physical conditioning without breath control makes you more fragile, not less. Strong muscles with untrained breath create internal resistance, like hitting a rigid wall instead of water. The force has nowhere to go. It rebounds inward. That's how injuries happen. If you've ever been hit hard and felt the air leave your body, the panic surge, the disorientation, that wasn't just the strike. That was your breath pattern failing under stress. Until you change that, no amount of toughness, mindset, or pain tolerance will save you. The solution is not learning to endure more pain, it is learning how to prevent pain from escalating in the first place. And that requires understanding the mechanism your body's already using against you. Now we move into the mechanism. And this is where myth collapses into biology. Pain is not produced at the site of impact. Pain is authorized in the brain. Between those 2 points sits a network of nerves, pressure sensors, chemical thresholds, and reflex loops. And breath is the master regulator that decides how loud the signal becomes. Muay Thai fighters are not numbing themselves. They are manipulating the gate. When a kick lands, mechanoreceptors in the skin and fascia fire instantly, but whether that signal becomes suffering depends on how the nervous system is primed in the milliseconds before contact. Breath determines that priming. The central player here is the vagus nerve, the largest information highway between your organs and your brain. Most people think of it as a calming nerve. That is dangerously incomplete. Under controlled pressure, the vagus nerve acts like a dimmer switch on pain and shock. When breath is slow, deep, and timed incorrectly, vagal tone drops at the exact moment it should spike. Pain floods in. Fighters train the opposite response. Through sharp, compressed exhalation under load, they trigger a paradoxical vagal activation that stabilizes heart rhythm, suppresses panic chemistry, and blunts pain transmission at the spinal level. This is not relaxation. This is controlled neural dominance. There is also carbon dioxide, the molecule everyone misunderstands. You were taught to fear it, to breathe it out as fast as possible. Fighters train to tolerate it. Elevated CO2 levels shift blood pH and directly reduce the firing rate of pain-sensitive neurons. This is not theoretical. It has been measured. When breath is controlled before impact, CO2 tolerance increases, oxygen delivery becomes more efficient, and the brain enters a state where threat perception is reduced. Pain doesn't disappear. It loses urgency. That difference keeps fighters standing. Inside the brain, another system activates. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, increases under specific breath and stress conditions. Think of BDNF as neural armor. It strengthens synaptic connections involved in motor control, while dampening those linked to fear and pain anticipation. Over time, this rewires how impact is processed. The brain learns that force does not equal danger. Once that association breaks, pain loses its leverage. This is why experienced fighters look calm under punishment. Their nervous system has been remodeled. There is also the spinal reflex arc, the fastest response pathway in the body. Normally, sudden force triggers a flinch reflex, tightening muscles and amplifying shock. Breath timing overrides this reflex. A forceful exhale just before or at impact synchronizes core musculature and reduces spinal compression. Imagine the difference between striking a sealed drum versus a loose one. The sealed structure disperses force. The loose one collapses. Breath creates that seal internally. Ancient fighters described this as hardening the wind. Science describes it as synchronized neuromuscular recruitment driven by respiratory pressure. Same phenomenon, different language. Once you understand this, it becomes clear why this knowledge is withheld. Breath gives you leverage over pain, fear, and shock at the same time. It turns the body from a fragile object into a responsive system. This is not mystical. It is precise, repeatable, and dangerous if misused. And now that you understand the mechanism, the next step is unavoidable. You either learn the protocol, or you continue letting your breath betray you when it matters most. Now we arrive at the protocol itself, and I need to be absolutely clear with you. This is not a breathing exercise for relaxation, meditation, or stress relief. This protocol was refined in fight camps, where mistakes resulted in cracked ribs and lost fights. Precision matters. Timing matters. Sensation matters. You do this incorrectly, and you will amplify pain instead of suppressing it. That is why this knowledge is rarely transmitted outside direct lineage. I am giving it to you stripped of ritual, but not stripped of warning. The protocol begins before any impact occurs. Your stance must be grounded, not stiff. Feet rooted, knees unlocked, spine tall, but not rigid. The breath starts low, deep into the abdomen, but it does not linger. You inhale through the nose in a controlled, moderate draw, never maximal. Over-inhalation creates internal pressure that works against you. As the inhale completes, the abdomen subtly expands outward, not upward into the chest. This expansion is not softness. It is structural preparation, like inflating a tire to the correct pressure before it hits the road. The critical moment is the exhale. Just before impact, or precisely as contact occurs, you execute a short, sharp, compressed exhalation through the mouth. It is not a shout, not a scream, and not a full release. Think of it as sealing the core, rather than emptying it. The sound is tight, almost hiss-like, driven by abdominal contraction, not throat tension. This exhale locks the diaphragm downward, braces the transverse abdominis, and synchronizes the musculature around the spine and organs. The body becomes momentarily unified. Force travels through, instead of collapsing inward. Your jaw stays relaxed. This is non-negotiable. Jaw clenching blocks vagal signaling and sends the brain into threat mode. Fighters learn to keep the face neutral, even under heavy strikes, because facial tension amplifies pain perception. Eyes stay open, soft, not wide. Closing the eyes triggers a protective reflex that increases shock sensitivity. These details look small. They are not. They determine whether the nervous system interprets the moment as controlled or catastrophic. After impact, the breath does not gasp. This is where most people fail. A gasp resets panic chemistry and erases the benefits of the exhale. Instead, you allow a controlled, slow nasal inhale to return, re-expanding the abdomen and resetting internal pressure. This recovery breath trains the nervous system to associate impact with stability, not emergency. Over repetitions, this rewires reflex pathways. Training this protocol starts without strikes. You practice timing the sharp exhale with sudden muscular engagement, like bracing against resistance. Only then is light impact introduced. Progression is slow, deliberate, and respectful of adaptation. Fighters who rush this phase get injured. Those who master it gain something rare: composure under force. This is not toughness. This is neurological control. And once you feel it working, there is no going back. The transformation does not happen all at once. And anyone who promises instant invulnerability is lying to you. The timeline follows nervous system law, not motivation. In the first few days, what changes is awareness. You begin to notice how often your breath betrays you under stress, how quickly panic breathing wants to take over when pressure rises. During this phase, impact still hurts, but it no longer shocks you the same way. The pain feels flatter, less explosive, more contained. That is your first measurable shift. Your nervous system is learning that it does not need to scream to protect you. After 2 to 3 weeks of consistent protocol training, something more structural begins to occur. CO2 tolerance increases measurably. Your breath naturally slows under stress instead of speeding up. Heart rate recovery improves. Impacts that once stole your air now feel like pressure without panic. Fighters describe this phase as finding the floor, because their internal stability no longer disappears when hit. Scientifically, vagal tone has improved, spinal reflex sensitivity has decreased, and pain gating at the dorsal horn of the spinal cord becomes more efficient. You are not ignoring pain. You are delaying it, controlling when it is processed. At the 1 to 2 month mark, the changes become visible to others. Your posture under impact changes. You stop folding. Your core responds automatically. The sharp exhale fires without conscious thought. This is where BDNF-driven neural rewiring becomes dominant. The brain has learned a new rule. Force does not equal danger. That rule alters everything. Fear decreases. Flinch reflexes fade. You begin to feel strangely calm. In moments that once overwhelmed you, this calm is not emotional. It is physiological. Beyond 3 months, the adaptation becomes difficult to reverse. Fascia thickens and reorganizes along stress lines. Bones adapt to load more efficiently because force is dispersed correctly. Pain perception shifts permanently upward. Fighters who reach this stage often struggle to explain it because it no longer feels like a technique. It feels like a state. They are not bracing. They are sealed. This is why veterans can take shots that would incapacitate newer fighters, even if they are older or slower. Their nervous system has crossed a threshold. Here is the part few people tell you. Once this adaptation occurs, ordinary stressors in life lose their grip. Sudden noises, confrontations, pressure at work, emotional shocks, they don't hijack your breath anymore. The protocol leaks into everything. That is why it is powerful, and why it demands respect. You are not just training for kicks. You are reprogramming how your body meets force everywhere. Now comes the challenge, and I will not soften it for you. Knowing this protocol and not using it is worse than ignorance. Once you understand that pain, shock, and collapse are mediated by breath, every moment you allow panic breathing to take over becomes a voluntary surrender. Muay Thai fighters did not ask for comfort. They asked for control. And control has a cost. It demands repetition, discipline, and the willingness to feel awkward and vulnerable during training before you ever feel powerful. Most people quit here, not because the protocol fails, but because it exposes how undisciplined their nervous system really is. I am challenging you to commit to this not as a trick, but as a reprogramming process. You practice the sharp exhale when bracing against resistance. You practice it when stress spikes. You practice it when your body wants to freeze. Every correct repetition tells your nervous system A new story about force and survival. Every incorrect repetition reinforces the old one. There is no neutral ground. You are either training resilience or rehearsing collapse. Do not romanticize this. This is not mystical toughness or warrior fantasy. This is biology under command. Fighters who master this do not feel invincible. They feel responsible because they know how much damage an unregulated body can take and how much control is required to stay intact. If you chase pain without breath, you will break. If you chase breath without discipline, you will delude yourself. The path is narrow for a reason. You may never step into a ring. That does not matter. Force will still find you in life. Sudden stress, confrontation, accidents, pressure you didn't plan for. When it does, your breath will answer before your thoughts can. The question is whether it answers with panic or authority. I have given you the mechanism, the protocol, the timeline. The rest is no longer hidden. It is no longer forbidden. It is now a test of who you decide to become under pressure.